Hello, and welcome to Sitter's Baked Goods. Today we're going to be making Hungarian shortbread. This is a nice fancy shortbread where you grate the dough to get that nice texture. If you have everything prepped, this can take 2 seconds to grate, put jam on, and throw it in the oven, which makes it perfect for the bakery because I can prep a whole bunch of these, and whenever I get an order, I can quickly pop them in the oven and have them be finished right away. It also gives any downtime where I'm not getting a lot of orders, I can still have my employees working on something so that they're not just sitting around. So, let's get into it. To start making your Hungarian shortbread, what you're going to want to do is get your eggs ready, put the salt, flour, sugar, and baking powder all in here, mix that up. So I have the flour and salt in so far. Give this a nice mix up before you put your butter in. You're gonna rub in the butter. Once you have everything mixed in and you're happy, put in cold diced butter. I'm gonna use the machine to rub it together. Once it's to the mealy stage, I'll add in the eggs. To use the machine to rub in, use the paddle and just put it on low speed. Don't put it to any past number 1. If you put it past number 1, you'll make it all the butter get smoothed in, and then you won't get that nice rise and flakiness from the dough. So just start on low. You want to get to this stage where there's some nice bigger pieces, mainly medium pieces, and a few small pieces. That will get you the best texture, which is exactly what you want. Now that it's at this stage, I'm going to add in my egg. Just to form a dough, this will literally take 2 seconds with the machine. If you're doing this by hand, just form a dough. Try not to overwork the dough. Make sure you get all of it in there. And then again, on low speed, you don't want to overwork the dough. And that's all it takes to be fully done. Take this out, move this out of the way. If you're vegan, you can replace the eggs with just water and the butter for shortening. It's not going to taste the same, but if that's your diet, then this works perfectly fine. And the main flavor comes from the jam, so it won't be too much different than this one. So once you get it to this stage with the machine, start forming it into a ball. It's a little wet. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna wrap it and put it in the freezer. Because you're freezing it, you don't need to worry about any of those small pieces. They'll be perfectly fine. So once you finally get it out, make a disc, just like so. Cover it. Make sure it's covered nicely so that you don't get any freezer burn on it. And then minimum, put it in the freezer for half an hour. This is a perfect recipe to make in advance because you can just put it in the freezer, come back a month later, and this dough will be perfectly fine and actually be even better because you want this to be grated to get that nice texture, and the colder it is, the easier it is to grate and to make sure that you still keep that texture. So we're just going to put this in the freezer, grate it up afterwards, put the jam on that we want, and get baking. So we're gonna grate half of the dough in here. Make sure you have a nice parchment paper underneath so you can lift it out when you need to. Once we put half the dough in, we're going to add our jam. In this case, we're going to be using raspberry, but you can use any jam you like. Once you grate half the dough, put the other half of the dough in the freezer while you're waiting to get the jam on. The longer this is in the heat, the faster it's going to melt and become dense like a normal shortbread. And the whole reason you're grating it is to get a nice light texture for the dough. Now that I've grated half of it, you can grate it a little bit more than half. Just make sure that you have enough dough to cover the whole thing. It's okay to have some jam coming out the top because then you get some color and it doesn't look so bad. But just slowly spread your jam everywhere. You want to spread it while you're pouring it and not just put all in one area, because you don't want to be touching the areas too much, because the more you press down on this dough, the more it's going to turn back to normal, and you don't really want that. You want this to be a nice light dough. And it also just speeds up your spreading because you don't have to start from one side and try and get everywhere else. Just go lightly and try and spread it everywhere. Make sure the corners get some nice jam. Someone orders 12 and get 4 of the corners that have no jam, they're gonna be really mad. So, careful with that. Make sure you spread it everywhere. If you're going really slow or you're in a very hot area, anything like that, you can put this in the fridge to buy you some time. And there we are, that's all we need. Now all that's left is grate the last bit of topping on and make sure you spread it out everywhere. If it starts breaking like that, finish pieces before you move on. It's okay if they're semi-big, just need to get them as small as possible with the grater. So these little pieces at the end, they are fairly big, but they're acceptable. Now that we got the top all good, we'll put this in the oven for 35 minutes. Again, it's always depending on your oven, but anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes. My oven's about 35. So let's get this in and be done for today. So it just came out of the oven. You're looking for that brown around here, because that has baking powder. It's gonna puff up, but as it cools, it's gonna shrink back down. Once this starts to cool, I'll scrape out the sides and lift it out. We'll clean off the edges and then cut them into 16 pieces. So we'll come back when that's done. Now that I can lift it out, make sure you pull like this so that it doesn't rip in half. You just pull it outwards. Scrape the outsides first. Make sure you do that or it's going to stick and rip. We're gonna just clean off the edges. We want to clean off these edges because these edges are basically all dough, no jam. Anyone who gets corner pieces is gonna be unhappy. So make sure that you clean everything up, move everything around so it's easier. It's good tasting crust, so that's good. You can see there's nice and fluffy. It's not like a normal shortbread. And of course, just like the lemon squares, these bits and pieces can be given to your customers as samplers, or you can give them to your employees, whoever you're feeling that you need to make happy in the moment. Then we're going to cut this into 16 pieces. So cut it in half. Make it easy on yourself. Don't make it awkward to cut. Make it easy. Every time you get this, you're going to put that all over the place. So before you move on, grab paper towel or cloth. Scrape that off. Now I'm just gonna set this up to a taste test, take some pictures, give you my feedback, and then we're done for today. Here we are. Give this a nice little taste test. It's nice and rich like a normal shortbread. Nice and smooth and fluffy. And then you get that aftertaste of jam. Not too powerful, it's subtle, which goes perfectly with this because you get the amazing shortbread taste and then you get a nice bit of raspberry in the end. I make this with any of my jams. They work with all of them. I'd stay away from putting lemon curd or marmalade in here. That might be a little bit too much for the shortbread to counteract it. But for strawberry, blueberry, raspberry, blackberry, any of those, should be good. Yeah, really good, really good. If you look on all of these, I can tell that the jam was spread out evenly through it, which is really good as well. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I even have my own website. Thank you, and have a nice day.